As humans, anything we set out to do has one ultimate goal in mind: to achieve happiness. We want to build wealth, we want to own a house, we want to drive a nice car, and one day have a family. These are all just side goals that we're chasing as a means to an end. The end being happiness. In fact, happiness is so important that Aristotle called it the meaning of life. Happiness is the meaning and purpose of life, the whole aim and end of human existence. But if it's that important, why are we seeing higher levels of unhappiness in young people today than at any other time in history? A 2022 survey by the US Census Bureau found that 44% of Gen Z adults reported persistent feelings of anxiety, and 33% reported regularly feeling depressed or hopeless. Now I know what you're thinking, those are big numbers, what could be causing this? Well, let's dive into it. According to another survey done in 2022, this time by Harvard University, 34% of Gen Zers struggle with feelings of loneliness. And while the survey doesn't necessarily give a cause for those feelings, I attribute them in large part to social media. I've talked about this before, but as social media has grown and as we've become more virtually connected, real-world meaningful connections have seen a significant downfall. But why is that a problem? Well, the longest study ever done on human happiness was also done by Harvard University, and it's been ongoing since 1938. The study found that there are two major things that contribute to lifelong happiness: physical health, which is why it's so damn important to always stay active, and having quality relationships. In fact, this was the most consistent finding in the survey, and it even had a direct relationship with improving your physical health. Dr. Robert Waldinger, the current director of the study, has a TED Talk titled "What Makes the Good Life," which I'll link below so you can check it out. But in his words, the clearest message that we get from the 75-year study is this: good relationships keep us happier and healthier. Period. Now, knowing the major cause of happiness and sadness is great and all, but it doesn't help if I don't offer you any advice on how to overcome it. So for the sake of keeping this video short, here is the single biggest piece of advice that I can offer you in terms of relationships. Now, it's super simple. Be intentional about your relationships. We live in the age of social media. Frankly, the world is just different now. People are kind of scared to talk to each other. Because of that, unless you're already close friends with someone, people won't just reach out to each other and ask to hang out. So if you have a desire to spend time with someone or just become friends with them, show them. Put your fear of rejection or looking awkward aside and just let them know you'd like to hang out. There's no better way than this, trust me. The truth is, people want to be sought after, not just in a romantic sense, but also in the sense of friendships. And there's no bigger compliment than knowing someone simply wants to be your friend because they think you're a cool person. So start reaching out to people. Side note, I've been thinking about making a video on how to build and foster genuine relationships with people, both romantic and platonic. If that sounds kind of interesting to you, then please let me know down in the comments. Thank you. Okay, switching gears away from relationships, that same Harvard study that I mentioned in the last section found that 51% of Gen Z adults see that the pressure to achieve great things is having a negative impact on their mental health. Now again, the survey didn't mention where this pressure is coming from, but my guess is that it's not from their peers or their teachers or even their parents. I believe that it's internal pressure brought on by none other than, you guessed it, social media. Social media has done an excellent, pristine, immaculate job at convincing our youth that if you're not a millionaire at 21, you're behind in life. I mean, we see it all the time in the form of streamers, creators, and OnlyFans models. The crazy thing is that there's always been rich young people, but before it was the exception. Talented individuals who could sing well enough to become a star, act well enough to make it to Hollywood, or code well enough to build a billion-dollar media empire. But now, with social media, it seems like everywhere you turn, there's another person making millions of dollars off of seemingly nothing. So we must be doing something wrong, right? How can we catch up? Well, no, not necessarily. Young people being rich are still the exception. In fact, only like 2% of all millionaires in the world are under the age of 34, which is 13 years older than 21. What we're dealing with here is what's known as visibility bias. Social media algorithms are built to push these success stories because it's what creates engagement. That's why we end up seeing all these young people making millions or driving supercars, or crashing them. No! 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 But we don't see everyone else who is struggling to gain traction. But naturally, because we see these young people achieving these things, it creates a desire within us to achieve them as well. You know, it's just human nature. And desire to achieve is not a negative thing in and of itself, but how can we stop it from creating negative feelings within us? Well, I recently heard this great quote by Naval that said, "Desire is a contract you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want." When you want something, you won't be happy until you finally get it. And again, there's nothing wrong with desire, but you have to embrace it in moderation. If you tell yourself, I want a nice car, and I want a nice house, and I want to be rich, and I want to surround myself with beautiful women, you're overloading your desire capability, which is going to lead you in a constant state of unhappiness because you don't have all of those things that you desire. So you have to be careful with how many desires you set for yourself. 1 or 2 really might be enough. Plus, if you're going after them, it's difficult to focus on more than that anyway. Also, it's important to be cognizant of the types of desires you're driven by and the goals you're chasing, because they don't all lead to happiness. Keep that in mind. By the way, I've been talking a lot about social media. I actually have an entire video on why I think using it a lot is a problem, so consider checking that out next if you're interested. And then there's the issue of money. 2025, a year when nobody can buy a house.
Except for rich people.
And people put themselves in massive financial debt to go to school.
Except for rich people.
Only to finish school and not be able to get a good paying job.
Except for rich people.
and then struggling for years to work their way up and increase their pay and finally be able to afford things late into adulthood. Okay.
Except for rich people's kids.
Because of nepotism.
Yup.
Fair. Listen, I'm right there with you, man. The economy is crazy. The cost of everything from gas to food to homes is insane. And I'm from Washington State. The median cost of a home here is pushing $600,000. My wife and I both have good paying jobs, and when it comes to buying a house, even we're like, sheesh, that's tough. I tell you that to say that I understand why 56% of Gen Z adults say that financial worries cause a ton of stress and anxiety in their lives. Now, my advice to help overcome this is not going to be about how to make more money. You know, I'm not a financial guru. I'm not sitting here in my garage with this brand new Lamborghini I just bought. Although I do own a good number of books though. But I'm not a finance expert. So it would be irresponsible of me to try to tell you what to do with your money or how to make more money. Instead, what I would say here is that you should embrace living simply and try and find joy in the small things outside of money. Few philosophers have embodied this idea more than Henry David Thoreau. Thoreau prided himself on always living a simple life. In fact, he lived in a cabin for 2 years with nothing but the essentials: a bed, a desk, a chair, and a book so that he could write about his experiences. He actively spoke out against wealth because he believed that if you got used to these luxuries, those things would become more important in your life than the small things, and you would become dependent on expensive or extravagant pleasures to satisfy your needs. Because of this, Thoreau was adamant in his belief that the wealthiest person is not the one who has the most, but the one who is most satisfied with what he has. Epicurus reflected this idea back in the 4th century when he said, "If thou wilt make a man happy, add not unto his riches, but take away from his desires." We have to stop seeking these external and expensive desires and instead embrace the cheap, mundane pleasures of life. Embrace going on walks, admiring beautiful views, getting lost in conversation with friends, reading a good book, or learning a new skill. When you learn to enjoy these things, they will create orders of magnitude more internal happiness than money ever could. And the best part? They cost you nothing. I wanted to touch on one more topic here, which I kind of hinted at with the title of this section, but it's the idea that unhappiness often stems from the overt desire to be happy. We focus too much on trying to be happy, so much so that we end up being upset about being unhappy, which leads to more unhappiness, so it just becomes this vicious cycle. I know it sounds like some kind of twisted paradox, but seeking happiness is the exact thing making you unhappy. Remember that quote from Naval? Desire is a contract you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want. If you desire happiness, you will be unhappy until you achieve happiness. But how can you ever hope to achieve happiness if you're unhappy about not being happy? Plus, I don't think humans can ever reach a constant state of happiness. You know, I've talked about that in old videos. Happiness is an emotion just like sadness, anger, fear, and like all other emotions, happiness is fleeting. It comes, it goes, it fluctuates over time. So we, as people, shouldn't focus on trying to be happy, but instead shift our focus towards things that have the potential to make us happy. Things like working on something we care about, spending time with people we love, being physically active. These things have all been proven to aid in happiness, and while there is no guarantee that it will make you happy, the potential is there, and that's really all we need. If we can focus on that, happiness will eventually find its way into our lives. In the book Man's Search for Meaning, Dr. Viktor Frankl writes, "Happiness cannot be pursued, it must ensue, and it only does so as the unintended side effect of one's personal dedication to a cause greater than oneself, or as the byproduct of one's surrender to a person other than oneself. Happiness must happen." We need to stop trying to be happy and just be happy. We need to let happiness happen. But with that, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.